pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence for the departed members of the military in the crash from Monday evening. As you may know, many of them were from Orange County, and they were stationed at Stewart. At least one of them, even though the names haven't been released, I know that at least one of them was from New Windsor. And there may be more locally that might get home. Okay. As you may have noticed outside, we put the flag at half-staff. I'm not sure what the rest of the government is doing, but that's what we're doing. Okay. I have a couple of quick things that I want to get into here, just as comments. And we'll adopt the agenda first, and then we'll get into it. So, motion to adopt the agenda. You want to get the agenda?
Yep.
You have one?
I never tried.
I got one. Yeah, good. Okay, yep.
I'll make a motion to adopt it.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. I'll also entertain a motion to, have you read the minutes? I have one correction, that's just a date on there. On the committee reports, the lake treatments, instead of July 13th, should be June 26th. Item D.
Oh, yeah, when you were talking, you said that might be it, when it would happen, but I can correct it, that's when it actually happened. What was the first date?
June 26th.
June 26th, okay.
Okay.
I'll make that tonight.
Other than that, I'll entertain a motion to accept them as written. This is the June 13th minutes. Motion by Lou.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Next item. Here's a couple comments I want to make before we get into the meat of the meeting. We, meaning myself, Tom Lark, and a couple other people, have been noticing dead snapping turtles on the lake. Some pretty large ones, I mean, like this, you know. And that's probably a turtle that's probably 35, 40 years old, you know. And really never saw that before in that kind of situation. Tom and I noticed two of them at the north end of the lake. It's unusual to see one. We saw two of them floating in the lake around June 6th or 7th. And then Kathleen, my wife, Kathleen and I were out on the lake on the 2nd of July, and a local resident asked us if we had seen any, and we said not recently, and he says, well, he pulled 4 of them out of the lake, and he spotted somebody out there actually swinging them by their tails. Now, the anatomy of the turtles is that the tail is connected to the spine, which goes up in the upper part of the shell, and you're basically dislocating the spine and killing the turtle. It's really cruelty to animals. I mean, these aren't hunters. They're swinging them, and according to the guy, there were 2 guys, swinging them, throwing them back into the lake. So that could be a reason. I will be getting an email out on that. You see anything like that, call the police, call the DEC hotline, try to get a picture of them, because it's, you know, it's criminal. I mean, and it's inhumane, really. It's a terrible thing to do. Most of the turtles you see visibly on the lake are smaller painted turtles, but the snappers you'll see occasionally, and there's quite a few of them in the lake, but now there's at least a half a dozen. In fact, Tom saw one floating by Reserve 5 yesterday morning. So there's, you know, that's roughly a half a dozen of them.
Do you think the big ones were lifted up, or do you think they're dying of something else in the water?
I didn't know what was causing it until this guy said he saw them doing it to the large turtles. You know?
To the large ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, we get the guy, we ought to just get together and swing him by something that's.
Just let the snappers have a little dinner, that's what you do.
It's actually two guys. One was described as a man in his maybe mid-40s and a younger person, you know, 20s, 30s, that kind of thing. So, be on the lookout. Trespassing continues at the dam. Tom did some cleanup there. We're finding a lot of fishing stuff over by the dam. Dam is off limits for swimming, for fishing, for anything other than authorized personnel. We're going to be dealing with that one. And we're having a problem on all the reserves. Now, one thing that's not helping us are some of the people in the adjacent areas. For example, it was reported to me the other morning that there's a Washingtonville community web Facebook page, and apparently the woman who runs that, well-meaning, but put a bucket list of 10 things to do, and item 3 on there was to go fishing at Beaver Dam Lake, inviting the world to come here. So local residents saw that, got into a discussion back and forth, and then they changed it to going fishing in a lake. So, you know, this is the kind of stuff that we're, you know, dealing with. The other thing is, she put on there, one of the items was to take a walk along the railroad, the old railroad bed from Washingtonville to Salisbury Mills, which means you're going to be crossing 2 dangerous bridges where people have gotten hurt, and, you know, like, it's kind of a foolish thing to put out there. You know. Anyway, and we've had some malicious mischief over here on this property, and we have 2 very crystal clear photographs of the 2 young men who did it. So we'll be looking for them. That's all I'll say on that. So, we're up to correspondence. We did receive some correspondence.
Are we able to put those 2 gentlemen's pictures on our Beaver Dam? I mean, are we going over the tail on that one?
Well, we could maybe, but you know, which one would you like to put out there? The one with the one guy who's standing out here adjusting the inside of his bathing suit and spending a little bit, maybe too much time with his hand down there, and you know, and or the other guy that you know, it's like, I think right now we'll just try to, we're getting close to identifying.
Okay.
All right, and we'll deal with it. No financial loss, just malicious mischief. You know? Anyway.
Sorry.
So we want to skip item 4? The grant. As anybody here not hear about us receiving a $100,000 grant award? Okay, well, bottom line is, what I put out in the email is really the whole story. We were awarded a $100,000 grant, it was approved by the state, to help us control invasive aquatic weeds. And, you know, the priority list was, on the priority list was water chestnuts, Eurasian milfoil, curly leaf pondweed, and we got all 3. And in case you didn't read the whole email, the bottom line is we spent a great deal of time with the county grants writer. You know, and a whole sequence of events happened real fast, from between February 1st, when we approved the resolution to ask the county to do this, and the deadline of March 24th. Doesn't give you a lot of time to do all of this, but it got done, and the application was submitted 40 minutes before the deadline. Went through the legislative committees, went through everything in record time, and I honestly didn't think we were going to see that much money, if anything, because there was a lot of competition throughout the state for this money, and we were, the maximum award was $100,000, and we were one of 4 applicants receiving the top $100,000 award. So what will happen with that is the state has to generate contracts between the state and the recipients, and that'll take some time. It'll go back and forth probably between the county attorneys and the state attorneys. So Realistically, we anticipate that this would probably kick in towards the end of the year, all right? Now, some of the things that we relied on, the grants writer did a superb job. I mean, I spoke to her the other day, and I sent the copies of the letter I sent out to her boss and the county executive. But some of the things that she put in there, I mean, were things that meant a lot, and that for points in their ranking system, and that was the work of the volunteers that we have here. The C-SLAB volunteers, the people that go out there and take the water samples and process them, people that have gone out for the past several years and harvested water chestnuts, people that go out there periodically and monitor the water conditions on the lake. These are all things that were identified in the grant application and improved our ranking position on it. So,
What was her name?
what was her name? I'm not sure I'll pronounce it correctly. Jody Dobrzinski. I'd rather spell it rather than
Spell it.
D-O-B-R-Z-Y-N-S-K-I.
R-Z-Y-S-K-Y.
No, D-O-B-R-Z-Y-N-S-K-I.
Okay.
And her first name is J-O-D-Y.
Nice Italian name.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that were cited in there was, for example, the Lake Steward Award that was received last year, that I accepted on behalf of the district, really. And those all meant something in this ranking. There's a 50% match on these funds, which means that the district has to match $50,000 for the 100,000, not 100. And we were able to show that we actually can match more than that because this is a 3-year program and we're spending almost $50,000 a year just on our chemical treatments. So we're able to easily show that we have a match there. Some components of the program were not just elimination and hopefully eradication of these weeds, but as an educational component. We've established some things there, and we've shown that we're already doing some educational efforts, which are evidenced on our website, as well as in the emails and the newsletters that have gone out. And we've had, there's also a proposal in there that as part of this, we would be putting up some educational kiosks on the property that would have information about invasive weeds, cleaning your boats, that kind of thing, as well as the DEC design for weed disposal stations at each of the launch areas. Okay, each of wouldn't be on this property; it would be on the other one. So, those are all pieces of it. Another part that was explained in detail was the public participation. Are there opportunities for that? Not only did we establish that we already do public participation, as by these meetings, by the fact that there's always opportunities and we welcome volunteers to pitch in and to help with things. So that counted. We established a track record that we know how to get things done, and we also, of course, will continue that in the future. So the commitment here, Jody wrote this to me today. Thanking me for the acknowledgement, and she says, the commitment and experience of Beaver Dam Lake District volunteers like yourself made our application much stronger, and you should all be commended for your hard work. So, like I said, at times we feel we don't have enough people volunteering to do things, but in the long term, we're able to get stuff done, and we show them we know what we're doing. So that went a long way. One of the things that was a component of this, which I thought we'd lose points on, and that was the public access question. Is there public access? And I wrote the section on that and answered it in this way. So I find it, which I think you might find interesting. Give me a second here. All right, I'm not too much time on it, but I answered it in a very, I highlighted it too, but I can't find it. It's tough to get over.
There is no public access, but people come here anyhow?
No. Not quite. Here's what I said, all right? Open and uncontrolled public access is not permitted. However, there is limited public access to Beaver Dam Lake whereby a reasonable number of non-resident guests, parentheses, the public, may use district facilities provided they are accompanied by a resident at all times when they are on the facilities or the lake. In the past, the Lake District has entered into intermunicipal agreements with one or more towns to allow use of lake facilities for a cooperative recreation program. These programs are open to non-residents as well as residents. It is conceivable that these types of agreements will exist in the future. Okay? So we relied on that as establishing some form of public access. And you know, we drew upon the history of the things that we tried to do over the last several years that really helped with this. So there were 40 applicants for $2.1 million, I think it was, and they awarded 35 applicants $1.7 million. So the ranking system, I mean, I don't know what our score was, but I think the way they do it is kind of like when you take a test and they do a weighted average. So you might get 100 on the test, but you only answered 50% of the questions right. You know? So that's where we are. And out of those 4 projects that were awarded the $100,000, 2 were aquatic, 2 were terrestrial. So we're actually only 1 of 2 aquatic projects. And we talk about things in here like moving towards mechanical removal means and shifting away from chemical, although there's chemical components of this whole thing. So that's where we are. I think that's a big plus. At the last meeting, I didn't realize we did actually approve this already, and that is, and I want to get this signed as a motion tonight, and I'll entertain a motion again, even though we did it last month, for staffing and operation of the Beaver Dam Lake District Beach. The motion is to authorize the chairman of the Beaver Dam Lake District Board to work with the Orange County Commissioner of Public Works to develop specifications for and solicit a request for proposal for the staffing and operation of the Beaver Dam Lake District Beach located at 557 Shore Drive in New Windsor. So I'll entertain that motion.
I'll take the motions.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Andy, second by Lou. Would you fill this out, Andy?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And absent, right down. Just fill in the boxes on that one.
Yeah.
The other thing we talked about for quite a while was updating the and improving upon the link study that was done here in 1991 and 92. So it's 25 years ago already. Right? Or it seems like yesterday, right?
Didn't think it was that long.
And I want to preface this by saying there's other grant opportunities out there, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. So for example, we got another suggestion today about putting aerators in the lake. And Andy had gone out and gotten some estimates for solar-powered aerators that just kind of rough idea of what it would cost to do this lake. And you came up with a number of round terms, about $250,000, right? Somewhere around that. So, you know, the question is that the right thing to do? Is it the wrong thing to do? You know, before you go and invest that kind of money, what do you know, what are the pros and cons of it, right? And then, how do you fund it? Right? Well, we could fund it with district funds, you know, of course, bonding or, you know, a charge over a period of years, you know. But there's grant money available. In fact, there's a grant program right now that's in the application cycle that will provide most of that funding for aeration systems, as well as funding for the phosphorus absorbing islands, if you will, that we learned about in last year at the nice fall conference. The caveat is you must have a written lake management plan adopted, and you must have identified all of the sources of phosphorus, both within the lake as well as those coming into the lake. And also have at least a plan in place to reduce those levels of phosphorus. Well, we don't have any of that, so you really no point in putting an application in for something that you don't meet the basic requirements for. So one of the things that I'm proposing in here is that we do that. I mean, the lake management plan has been long overdue, and it's really time for it. So here's what I'm proposing. Let me read the whole thing, and it could be modified, but I want to get the ball rolling. I know there was debate about a lake study by my predecessor, and probably 7, 8, 10 years ago, and basically it looked like, judging by what's in the files, a lot of people meant well, but the wheels were spun and nothing really got done about it. So I looked at some of the stuff that was in there. I looked at some of the other things that we've, that are more modern, if you will, more updated, and I put it in here and left it a little open. So this motion is to authorize the chairman of the Beaver Dam Lake District Board to work with the Orange County Commissioner of Public Works to develop specifications for and solicit a request for proposal for a comprehensive lake management plan for Beaver Dam Lake. The proposed scope of work and deliverables include, but are not limited to: 1, develop a written comprehensive lake management plan that will include recommended actions for reducing phosphorus levels in the lake water and for managing aquatic weeds in the lake. Have a formal program in place. 2, develop an updated map depicting the outline of the Beaver Dam Lake watershed using existing watershed mapping and information available from the Orange County Water Authority, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the U.S. Geological Survey, the CSLAP program, as well as other existing map sources. So I'm not asking them to go out and do a survey, in the field. Just get all the maps together, come up with something that makes sense, because there are differences between what each of these agencies has on file for the watershed boundaries. And there's also, for example, you look at the Orange County Water Authority map, as a caveat to it that says there's discrepancies that they're not sure of. Is this area within Beaver Dam Lake's watershed or another watershed? So that needs to be clarified, right? We need to know what our watershed is so that we understand what potentially can be coming into the lake. Perform an updated comprehensive aquatic weed survey of the lake. We did it in 2012. That was relied upon as part of the grant application that we put in, and as part of the project description, that's included in there to do an updated aquatic weed survey as the first step of everything else that will take place in that program. So this part would be funded, okay? We'd have funding for this. Perform a pathological survey and map of the lake bottom using 1-foot contours, right? Maybe you want to go more, maybe less, I don't know. But I just picked a number. This has been recommended to us in the past. It's also included in this granted project for funding. And the reason that it's important from a lake management standpoint is that you'll get a better understanding of exactly what the volume of water is in the lake. I mean, there are estimates right now. We don't really know for sure. And where that's important is you can tailor your water treatments, your chemical treatments, to a more precise volume rather than the guesstimate that's on file. Another aspect of that is it's important for people who are fishermen. They have interest in it. People that are boating, it would show you the stone walls and the obstructions that are below the surface, that sort of thing. So there's safety issues involved there too. Identify the locations and sources of all tributary streams entering the lake. Identify the locations, function, and sources of all of the pipes and culverts entering the lake. There's a lot of stuff there that probably shouldn't be there. right? Identify the levels of phosphorus entering the lake from all tributary streams as well as from significant shoreline pipes and culverts, and other items as may be deemed appropriate by the Commissioner and the Beaver Dam Lake District Board Chairman. So basically what this resolution does is it gives me the opportunity to say to the Commissioner, okay, let's move on this, all right? Which is kind of what he needs in order to get this going. It doesn't commit us to spending anything because you're going out requesting proposals to do this work. All the contents of this can be modified in what we put out as a spec, as well as once you decide on a consultant, you can do some modifications to the exact scope of work. If we sit here and try to polish this to the point, to the nth degree, we'll be doing the same thing that was done 7, 8, 10 years ago, and we'll spin our wheels and not get it done. So I'd like to move on that. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to.
I'd like to add to that, though, before we vote on it. And, I think the grant that we just got is congratulations, and it's a blessing. And I also think that we could use I read the attachment you put in the email, went out to Cuomo's site, the government site.
Right.
And there was a statement made by Tom O'Meara, that it's important that we spend this money and, keep after our watersheds. I'd like to couple the resolution with a letter back to Cuomo and O'Meara and tell them, look, thank you. We met, we take it seriously, and we're actually implementing this. So that I think that if in the future, as you find some suspect areas that need some nudging along to be repaired, that we've identified, we've got leaks here and leaks there, and they're not privately owned leaks, they're public issues, that they've been in the loop the whole time on how we're diligently spending the money that was awarded to us, and maybe we get a little bit more response in those repairs as we, 2 and 3 years from now, when the studies come in and we identify these areas, that we get more buy-in, because let's face it, we're 10 months, 11 months into finding a cancer-causing carcinogen flown into the lake in people's wells, and there's a pond that's still untouched at the Air Force Base, which is kind of,
I think what you're saying is good, but I think we're going to be clouding this whole issue. So I'd rather do that separately from this.
well, with it, I mean, using it, put the resolution right in and say, we went to our board meeting and this is how we want to spend it.
I'd rather keep that separate because we've already identified a scope of work and a project plan for the grant money, all right? So it really it's got to do with the grant money at this point. What I want to do is this takes us to the next step. We could certainly utilize the things you're saying to bolster our position, but I think it's just going to confuse things at this point. What I don't want to,
I think we got it from day one.
and there's a reason I'm saying this, that I ran into a lot of opposition about getting a watershed map done.
Of course.
Because of concerns about opening up another Pandora's box. So
Absolutely.
I don't want to do that at this point. I want to do it.
Yeah, but what's the sense of getting back a study that we don't have backing to get stuff fixed?
You will. You'll end up.
Yeah, 11 months, we got cancers.
That's a whole different item, okay? We're looking here specifically more or less at phosphorus, all right?
I understand, and that's going to be sewer. That's going to be...
Well, it's going to be a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, but I don't really want to cloud the issue. If we start doing that, we're going to be back to, I know what's going to happen at the other end. It ain't going to work, all right? And we'll be back to where they were 8, 10 years ago. So let me get this done, all right? Well, trust me on this, all right? You need to take a step at a time.
I think we need to acknowledge we got given 100 Gs that needs to let them know we're diligently going to spend that money.
That will be in the contract, that's already addressed. Don't get into that, because if you start saying the wrong things there that conflict with the project proposal, then it's going to change things, right? It's just going to say...
The project proposal said clean up phosphorus.
You didn't see the project proposal. You didn't see the project proposal. The project proposal is 24 pages, and this is the...
We want to address phosphorus, right? Is that in
Well,
there?
no, it's not in there. Phosphorus is not in there, okay? What's in here is, in fact, this is only the first part of it. The project plan is quite a few pages. That's an addendum to this. And it addresses specifically dealing with weeds, okay? Not dealing with sources, all right? It's not, and in fact, what they specifically exclude from this grant are preventative actions, believe it or not. It's a response grant, all right? It's a rapid response and control, not addressing prevention from the standpoint of identifying sources of nutrients, that sort of thing. So, please, let's not cloud the issue here. Let's take it on this, all right? And if you want to do something different than that, draft it up, and we'll add that to something else, but not as part of this, please.
I don't see how we don't.
It'll cloud this document, and you know, I'm going to tell you something. I put an awful lot of hours into getting this grant to this point. All right?
And I agree we need a study, but when the study comes back.
And I put an awful lot of hours into convincing the powers to be at the county that we need to do these other things. We start raising a flag on something else, it's not going to be good. All right? And I'll tell you this. You want to do that? I'm walking away from it, all right? I'm going to tell you what I said at the beginning of the year. I'm chairman for 3 to 6 months. This is month 7. So my days are numbered with this thing. So I'm going to tell you this right now. You're either going to trust me on this and understand that my experience here in managing things has been productive, or I walk away and then you guys are on your own.
You're not going to be here to implement the results of that. You just said you're leaving. And I'm thinking, we're going to get a great study back, and we're not going to have backing in effect.
I'm done with this, all right? I'm putting this on the side. Next item. You just screwed yourself. You live on the water. You got all the crap in your backyard that me and a whole bunch of other people have been actually out there picking crap out of the lake, whereas the other day we picked out a bunch of a new infestation of water chestnuts within view of your dock that you don't even see. All right, you've got to get out there and start doing this stuff.
Yeah.
All right, I'll entertain the motion to do this. All right, is there as written? All right, without modification. Is there Is there a motion on the floor? Anybody want to make the motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? All right, motion by Lou, second by.
Only because I know what he's talking about, and I know what happens with this stuff.
I'm not disagreeing that the proposal doesn't go forward. You didn't hear me clearly.
Yeah,
I didn't disagree that the
Right.
proposal doesn't go forward.
right.
I'm disagreeing that once the proposal is written, we haven't had, you've got, when it rains heavy, a
Right.
sewer dumping stuff in our lake.
Yes.
Right. And no one's willing to fix it. And so I'm saying, we're putting this proposal together, we need to be more vocal with the legislation.
You don't
that says,
understand
once we find.
you don't understand the politics of it. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
I understand that, but once the proposal comes back, the politics aren't going to let us fix it.
No, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Lou and I have been successful in getting some things done here that you wouldn't have gotten done had we not had documentation to back us up with. Right?
I'm not saying getting the documentation. I'm saying getting the documentation, I have no problem
Don't
with.
cloud this resolution. The politics get into it. Anything that's going to raise a red flag is going to just shut it down. All right? Motion's on the floor and seconded. Is there a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
All right, 1 abstention. Motion fails without, we need a majority of the board. Okay? End of story. You screwed yourself. You live on the water. You got more to lose than I do.
I know.
You do. I was afraid this was going to happen. I figured it was going to come from somebody like Tom Coral, but you know what? I'm surprised that it's coming from you. Get this thing moving or you're not going to go anywhere with it.
I said, let us get it moving.
Don't add to it. Don't cloud the water. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
All right? You want to change your vote?
No.
All right, done. We'll wait till the next meeting. And by the time we get this done, the lake will be drained and you'll be able to do the study. So. Okay.
When you go out for an RFP, you're going to get consultants that come in with
Other recommendations.
With other recommendations. Is there something that at that time is?
You can do some modifications then. You get the thing going.
You want to get
And
consultant
then
on board, yeah.
You get the thing going, and then once the consultant gets in there, then you get other things that come down. You
Yeah.
start adding the other things to it in the beginning, you're gonna end up going
Yeah,
nowhere.
that's what I was thinking of, maybe under that consideration, you're gonna get a consultant in. We're gonna go out, we'll interview maybe, the county will interview maybe 4 or 5 consultants. And you sit down and you talk to them, and they come up with a proposal.
I'm not disagreeing with anything.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, a copy of that resolution is sent with a thank you letter to the people that said our watershed is important. And when they acknowledge that we have not only spent our own money in chemical treatment, we're going to match their money and continue to harvest weeds out of the lake and so on and so forth, and on top of it, we're spending additional money to handle the phosphate, which is part 2 of our lake, and we thank them for acknowledging one of the largest grants. I don't know how you get wrong when we finally have the consultants say, here are your pollution points. And if you do this, this is going to resolve a lot of items.
Do it separate from this, is what I'm trying to tell you.
I
Yes,
understand
it's
that.
good. Do it separate from this, because most of what you're just describing, what we spend and what we've been doing has already been addressed in the application. That's why we scored so high.
Absolutely.
Now, as far as the thank you letter, that's great. That'll be addressed, all right? But it has to be addressed back through the county, okay?
Absolutely.
Now, but this is apples and oranges, all right? Deal with this, let's get this ball rolling, get a consultant on board, or we're not gonna be, this is gonna degenerate into the same baloney that happened 7 or 8 years ago, all right? Don't cloud the issue.
I'm not clouding the issue.
It does, it
I'm
does.
adding leverage.
You don't,
to the issue.
no, you're not. You're adding a situation that's gonna, believe me, I already, look, I put in a request to have a watershed map drawn up by the Orange County Planning Department, their map division there.
Absolutely.
All right? It was, the commission squashed it.
Right.
And because they were afraid that we were gonna start pinpointing other things in there, and it was gonna open up a big can of worms, and they didn't wanna deal with it. I said, well, we already have watershed maps, we wanna make it more concise, you know? And what are you gonna use it for? I said, it's part of a phosphorus study. He said, well, if you put it in terms of that, and just leave it very close to that, and just focus on phosphorus, then he would support it, all right? But you're gonna add something else into this, don't. Don't mention the other word that you just mentioned as part of this, PFOA or any of that.
No, not going to mention it.
Well, you did.
No, I'm telling you, as an example, we have an issue uncovered and there's no support to it.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not a carcinogen, all right? There's no evidence that it's a carcinogen.
I don't see people drinking it out of their faucets.
Well, it's a different thing. They don't know what the hell.
And those 4 letters weren't going to be in anywhere in anything.
Don't.
But the point I'm trying to make is, we have an issue and nobody's helping.
All right, you know what? I'm gonna tell you. I'll tell you this.
We can talk. It's going to be an abstain. So just
All right, you can
move on.
abstain all you want, but you know what? Technically, I can call the commissioner and we can move forward with it anyway.
Perfect.
Don't really need your vote on it.
Perfect.
And that's what I'll do. All right, and then if that gets turned down, then then you justify your actions. So. But you shoot yourself in the foot. Now, I want to point out something else here that we received back in at the April whatever and the April was there. We went to the nice fall conference. Beginning May. DEC came out with a publication, Harmful Algal Bloom Program Guide. And in there is a chart, and I made a copy of it. We'll have it up on the board here, and we'll send it out to the board. That talks about different options involving control methods, all right? It talks about things like the floating islands, biomanipulation, algicides, nutrient precipitation, and inactivation. One of the things that came up that was presented at that conference that one of the vendors had was a product called Phoslock. And, Fred and I looked at that, a lot of excitement, it binds with the phosphorus and drops it out of the water column and locks it up. Gives you the pros and cons of these various things, including this precipitation and inactivation method. And the bottom line is not presently allowed. Presently illegal in New York State. So, used in other states with success, okay? So you're taking the phosphorus in the lake, the nutrients in the lake, and you're dropping them out and inactivating them. Presently illegal in New York State, but a permitting approval method may be developed in the future. A detailed project proposal and plan will be required, right? Cost is anywhere from $100 to greater than $500 an acre. Not really too bad, but not an option right now. So, but the fact you make, why do you take that? You're interested in some of the options there. So now, we, as you know, we got hit with new Department of Health rules for how algal blooms that really messed up our beach operations this year. We're past the point where we got approval to reopen the beach. We can no longer rely on the test kits that we have to do the clearance on the water, but it is what it is. And if we get another harmful algal bloom showing up into the swimming area, you can expect the beach to be shut down for a minimum of several days until the samples are taken and the lab report gets generated, the whole thing. So it is what it is. We have no control over it. It's very frustrating.
What's the process? You spot it.
Once it clears visually, you wait 24 hours and you take, not us, we can't take the water sample. A representative from the health department comes out, takes the sample, packages it, sends it up to the only lab in the state that's approved by the New York State Health Department to process it, and that's in Albany. They get it, they process it, and they send you the results and say, yeah, it's clear. But it's a time-consuming thing.
You would last time you said it was 5 or 6 days?
Well,
From spot
it took over a week on the last one, and the best you could hope for is maybe 3 days, but from the time it clears.
From the time it clears.
Yeah, I mean, we had the ability before to do a field test on it. But that's what it is.
Okay.
The beach is being supervised from a distance by myself, but by our senior lifeguard has been working on it. He's so far okay. As it stands now, the beach will probably close mid-August when we run out of lifeguards. So that's the way it is. And we have one individual who's comes here a couple hours a week, stops in with her kids, and has offered to help keep an eye on things. But that's it, you know. So hence the reason for the getting proposals to contract it out. Okay. Water quality, the lake treatments, we did the herbicide treatment. It was less than satisfactory. There are some contractual issues there which the board is aware of, and I'm not going to go into detail on it in public because of the contractual nature of it. The second treatment was an algicide treatment. Our water clarity has been improving even without that, but today it's at, depending on where you measure it, it's at 5 feet here at the beach, about 7 feet over by the dam when Fred did the sea slab samples today. So water clarity is pretty excellent for now. I expect that to change because of the history that we have, the data we have. I mean, it's going to continue to decline until the end of the season. No matter what we do to it, it's still going to decline. If we don't do the treatments, it will be worse. So, water chestnuts. We talked about having a harvest this year. Well, bottom line is they didn't really materialize to the degree they had in prior years. So looks like we've made some successes there. It's not that we don't have to continue to do this and keep monitoring the lake, but we don't have to do the huge harvest where we pulled out at the peak 8,000 to 10,000 of the rosettes, we estimated. So far this year, on June 19th, we found 12. July 2nd, we found 29, that's up in the north end. One resident reported pulling 2 of them out near Reserve 8. And Mary Vecchio pulled 2 out on the 9th of July up at the north end. And then when the treatment contractor was in Monday, I asked them to keep an eye out for water chestnuts, and they located a cluster over in the cove by the island, behind the island, almost where the cove starts, coming from the dam. Those were removed yesterday by Tom Walk. He pulled out 14 clusters, 14 rosettes there. The nuts are growing further. Prior to this, they were all very immature nuts. These nuts are pretty viable now. They're starting to get to that point. And there were 8 stems and 14 rosettes on it. Now, what that's indicating, and they were all in the same area, what that indicates to me is that a rosette had floated around and then dropped its bombs over in that one spot and caused the growth this year. You'll probably see more come up in that spot next year. But these were taken out before the nuts can mature. So total right now, we found a grand total of 59 rosettes rather than 8,000 or so. Literally, we filled up a large dump trailer, pretty much, about 3/4 of the way in the past. This barely is halfway on a laundry basket, So that's a success. That's a good success, and that's owed to the hard work and dirty work by a fairly small group of volunteer residents who went out there, and some did different things. Some made brownies and chicken salad sandwiches. Egg salad sandwiches, which was how everybody that participated in one way or the other was very helpful. Okay.
You went over the broken back.
Fred literally tried to break his back to work. So. The first year was just Mary Vecchio and her son that went out there, and then we ended up, I think, at the peak about 20 people. So. Okay, so that's where we are. Goose management. Here's the goose report. The goose report is this year, a total of 14 nests were located on the lake, or on the shores of the lake. 68 eggs were treated, and 16 geese were removed. There's still probably about 20 to 30 geese on the lake. A management program is not a complete eradication. You're never going to eradicate them. But compared to the population in 2012, 194 geese were removed that year. 230 eggs were located and oiled in 43 nests. So last year and the year before, the numbers have been declining. Went up a little bit this year. Last year and the year before, there were no geese removed. Part of that, I think, is that they got frightened by the airboat. But the population is way down. I mean, and I still get people complaining that there's all these geese on the lake. Well, 40, 50 geese on a lake like this is relatively manageable versus the probably 300 that we had in 2011, 2012 time frame when you couldn't drive down Shore Drive or parts of Lake Road without having to stop for the geese, and you had goose poop all over the place. So, and that was this is our 6th year in that program.
USDA got how many this year?
We got a total of 68 eggs were treated.
No, the geese themselves.
So they removed 16.
16.
We did notice that there were 13 babies that were hatched, 5, 5, and 3. So I guess they missed a few yet, but I did a count. I come up with less than 20 really, so you probably got more than that I didn't see. But these are resident geese. They came in on April 11th, April 24th, May 8th, and I'm going to say about a week or so ago, end of June. They did the removal the end of June, but the oilings were on those first 3 dates. And interestingly enough, on their follow-up visits, they found 3 nests that were abandoned, but they found more nests. So sometimes what happens is if they realize the eggs aren't going to hatch, they abandon that nest and create another one, lay more eggs. So, but anyway, that's where we are. Good, successful program at no cost to our district. Everybody, I've got many letters saying and inquiries. When are they coming? When are they coming? When are they coming? And the answer is, I'm never going to tell you because I don't want to have a repeat of what's happened in other places where we have people protesting, and it's a maintenance action, it's a management action, and the geese that are removed are brought to a food processing plant, and they're packaged and given out to homeless shelters and food banks. So, very humane way they handle it if you've seen it done. But with that, that's it. Right? Any old business to go over? Any new business? Anybody in the audience here wish to speak?
Hi.
Debbie?
I was wondering what the status was. Could you please give us an update on the dam project? And
Update on the dam project will be sent out in a letter as soon as it's gone over with the commissioner. And really, it's not that I'm not at liberty to say anything. It's just that there's a lot of things that are in transition right now that dates are really not meaningful at this point. And the only thing I can tell you is that the county had a survey crew out here June 6th or 7th, and they did some elevations over by the dam. They did some survey work as part of this, but there really hasn't been much progress. So as soon as I get more information from the commissioner, it'll go out there. That's the best I can answer at this point. Anyone else? Lee-Sung?
I was wondering if you've heard more about jointer line. You mentioned that a few months ago. Any more word on that?
No.
Would it surprise you that the temporary restraining order was lifted and then they're in operation again?
That doesn't surprise me because I read it in the newspaper.
It's whatever they're discharging into the stream is coming into the, potentially could be coming to the lake. What are we doing about this?
Are you aware of them discharging anything into the stream?
No, not personally, but
Well.
that was a issue that you had with them a
Yeah.
few months ago.
That was an issue that they were cited on by the DDC in the past.
So this problem does not concern you anymore, is that correct?
I didn't say that.
So it does concern you.
Well, yeah, and one of the ways to identify things like that is to have some monitoring done and to have identify exactly what the impact of that would be by doing a study, including that indirectly in this proposed study. But unfortunately, we'll probably move on it. Yes, it's of great concern.
I have a second issue about the herbicide application. There was no algae bloom all the way up till late June, and then we put in the herbicide. 3 days later, we had algae bloom. And do you think action of
Actually, the algae, I don't have the dates here, but the algae blooms were earlier than the herbicide treatment. Not only this year, but last year. The algae blooms, the blue-green algae blooms happened before the first application of herbicide or algicide.
So when was the first date of the algae bloom this year?
This year or last year?
This year.
I don't have the exact date, but it was probably about a week before. We had evidence of blue-green algae blooms on the lake for probably 2 weeks prior to the one that occurred in the swimming area.
So
Probably a good 2 weeks before that.
the first appearance of
I
algae.
don't recall the dates offhand, but the one that affected the swimming area was on a Friday, I guess it was. Just before the 4th of July weekend. So what date was that, June 30th, 29th, 30th?
Is that the first day of algae bloom appearance? Of the
No, I just said that was the first time it impacted the swimming area.
No, because I could see it from my house. It just goes
The
down.
first bloom, one of the first blooms was when I was picking up the
It's-
signs. We were loading my car up with the signs and we saw it
Yeah,
coming down. That was a couple days before we.
that wasn't the first one. We had it even earlier than that.
Okay.
We observed it up in the north end by Reserve 8. Probably a good 2 weeks before.
Okay.
Because that's
And
all.
by you, and it was, there was some by Reserve 2, there was some by Reserve 1, but there was none in the swim area. We opened the beach for a few days, and then we observed it in the swim area. It's not a uniform thing. It's going to happen, it could happen in one end of the lake and not the other. So, but the occurrence of the blooms was both last year and this year was prior to the first treatment. Anyone else?
I also wanted to know if you could please update us on that private water corporation that was going to buy that whole big thing. I'm not up to date on that.
I wish I could, but it's really, most of that transaction is not within the purview of this board, other than the potential impact on several of the Lake District owned properties.
Did they buy, did the transaction take?
Transaction occurred, it was announced publicly the end of May, right?
We're waiting for our bill.
End of May.
bill yet?
Yeah, end of May.
We didn't get our bill yet for the new company.
Again, it's not something we're going to discuss here tonight because that really has not a lot to do with us. And the part that does have to do with us is being handled by the county attorney's office. So we're not at liberty to discuss the aspects of that publicly. All right, there's some legal issues that are, and negotiations that are going on there, but outside the hands of this board.
What happened to the easements that you talked about?
Again, that's all I'm going to say on the subject. Okay. So it's being addressed by the county attorney's office.
Is there anything that's out there we can read about? The decision or whatever, something like that?
I didn't hear.
Is there anything that you can give the residents to read, and maybe, you only talk about maybe 30 seconds. Maybe there are documents, we can read.
You can read what's ever on the Public Service Commission website and what's been in the papers. I have nothing else that I can share with you that's pertinent. Okay. Anybody want to resurrect anything before we close the meeting? Going once? Twice? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned at 8:05.
What happened to Tom today? How come he didn't come? Maybe he usually comes, last month he